Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be walking you through a remote access setup for your Raspberry Pi. And we're going to be making use of the Raspberry Pi Connect. It's a feature that the Raspberry Pi actually have. So I'm going to be walking you through on how to remotely access your Raspberry Pi when it is plugged on. All right, stay with me. All right, so here is my Raspberry Pi, and I have a very cute case for it. And a bit of a sliding cover right here. Yeah, and I have a tiny fan too. So you know that the Raspberry Pi has like an SD card port for those who are conversant with a Raspberry Pi. And here it is. I have a tiny micro SD port, card which I put in here. And I'm gonna be installing my Raspberry Pi OS on this micro SD port. All right. So I have a docking station, and you might not be seeing it. I don't have a second camera, just one camera I have. So I'm going to be plugging it to my docking station so that it can be connected to my PC right here. Then we'll be accessing the raspberrypi.com, their homepage, and that's where we're going to be downloading the Raspberry Pi software. I currently use a Mac, so if you click on the software, you find on the page you find software. There's a hardware. Hardware is the Raspberry Pi, the hardware, then maybe the display and various other accessories. You see them here, and more informations about them and how to use them. So for today, we're going to be dwelling on the software. And so we're going to be downloading the Raspberry Pi OS. So I'm going to be clicking on download for Mac OS, which is right here. And it takes about, let's say, 11 seconds to download about 43.9 megabytes. Yeah, I think my download speed is a bit fast. Yeah. Okay, we're waiting. All right, so it has downloaded. So right here, I'm just gonna click on the Raspberry Pi imager, and I click on it, and it opens, and I say open. Yay! So now it opens. So it says select. Let me make it bigger so we can all see it. It says select your Raspberry Pi device. I currently use a Raspberry Pi 5, so I'm going to be clicking on that and follow through with the instructions. Says next. It says here, choose your operating system. Choose your operating system. So I'm going to be choosing the Raspberry Pi OS, 64-bit. Yes, so that's where I'm going to be clicking on. Then my storage device, remember I said I have a micro SD card which I had to fix in my Docker station, which is connected to my PC. So I follow through with the instructions which says next. Then now I have to enter your host name. The host name is like the username of the Raspberry Pi, what you want to name the Raspberry Pi, which is more like your root address or your name. So I chose Genesis Hub, which um, so we click here, then localization. So we have to also customize our localization, not just our host name. Localization is where we are or where you are. So I'm currently in Canada, and my time zone is America or Toronto, and the keyboard layouts I'm gonna be choosing US. So next. So now I have to also give a username, a password, and I also have to make sure that I have this at the back of my my fingers, or I have to write it somewhere so that I don't forget, or because I will be asked about, like, once the Raspberry Pi comes on, this is um one of the informations that the Raspberry Pi will request from me to grant authentication to have access into the Raspberry Pi. So Genesis Hub, that's what I put here as a username. Then password. Let me put it two. 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2. So here you have to also choose the Wi-Fi, maybe your home network, the Wi-Fi that your laptop is connected to. So that's the SSID. You have to put the SSID. You also have to put the password of your network. All right, so you follow through with the next instruction. Next, then I also have to enable SSH and authentication mechanism. You also have to click on use password authentication. That's what you want to use. You don't want to use a public. You can decide to use that, but for this, me, I want to use the use password authentication. So I click on next. Then remember, I made mention of something called the Raspberry Pi Connect. Raspberry Pi Connect is a feature that helps you remotely access your Raspberry Pi, monitor it, and also um, impute it. You don't necessarily need to connect a mouse or a keyboard to your Raspberry Pi. You can remotely set up or remotely um, uh, do some or carry out some activities on your Raspberry Pi. So I click here. So we'll move further to open Raspberry Pi Connect. I click here. It's going to take me to the Raspberry Connect or connect the raspberrypi.com web page or page. So here I had already set up my user as a user of the Raspberry Pi Connect. So and I've logged in already. So all I have to do here is just to click on create an authentication key. And what it's gonna do is that it's gonna take me right here and you see, it has already uploaded the authentication token, which is right here. Then I click on next. Then I click on, it's now doing a summary of everything that I have imputed. I chose what the device I chose was the Raspberry Pi 5, Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit, generic mass storage media, and host name. I have, this is what's going to customize the Raspberry Pi. It's going to have a host name configured, localization configured, user account configured, Wi-Fi configured, SSH enabled, and remember the Raspberry Pi Connect. It also has to be enabled for you to have remote access into your Raspberry Pi. So now I'm going to click on write, and it's going to say you are about to erase all data on the generic mass storage device or mass storage class media. All right, so this action is permanent and cannot be undone. Oops. So once I click here, I have to also do this here. So it starts writing, and it takes about, let's say, 15 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes for it to actually write the OS on the micro SD. So we're just gonna be waiting. We're halfway there. We're almost there. I don't want to skip the verification. If like, I would have clicked on verification, but it's also good you verify whether it has been written so that everything is going to function very well. So we're almost there. 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. All right. So customizing iOS to okay, so perfectly it has been done, right, complete. So your device, what has been like installed on the SD card is a Raspberry Pi 5, Raspberry Pi OS, and the storage is the generic mass storage. That's my micro SD. So I click on finish, then we're here. So now at this point, we now have to um At this point, we now have to power our Raspberry Pi. And also, um, we also have to plug in our SD card into our Raspberry Pi. Remember, I made mention that my Raspberry Pi has a memory card slot, which is just right here. So I have to slot in my memory card right here into this slot here. Make sure it's sitting perfectly. Okay. So secondly, I have to power up my Raspberry Pi. So I have a Type-C cord, which has Type-C at both ends. And remember, as you can see here, the Raspberry Pi also has a Type-C port. Okay, here we go. Has a Type-C port right here. So I plug it here, and also my laptop. I use a Mac laptop, so it also has a Type-C port here. So I plug it in, and I will notice that you're gonna notice that the Raspberry Pi is gonna power up. So now, once the Raspberry Pi powers up, what we're going to do now is go back to the browser and go back to connect.raspberrypi.com, and we will sign into our account. Remember that I said we have to create an account, right? Let me close this and start afresh. Connect.raspberrypi connectraspberrypi.com, sorry. So you click on that. So you see that I have one Raspberry Pi connected here, but now we're gonna refresh to see another Raspberry Pi that's connected um to my account. I'll refresh again. Let's see if it comes up. Refresh again. It should come up. Let's just give the Raspberry Pi some time to actually reboot or boot so that we can actually now see it, or it's going to be visible here under the devices that are assigned to this account. Let's just give it some time. Okay, let's try it again. Press no, nope. Remote update, nope. This is the old one. The new one is supposed to come up. So it's showing here that my Raspberry Pi is actually online. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on connect via screen share. So I'm gonna click on screen sharing, or let's see, two. So here you go. You actually have access. We have access right now to our Raspberry Pi remotely. This is basically the run through or the rundown on how to remotely set up or remotely access your Raspberry Pi without a monitor, a keyboard, or a mouse. So now let's just go to the browser. Let's flex our our new remote access to our Raspberry Pi. Let me click on the browser. So it's asking me. Remember, I said that it's gonna ask you for your password once you start up your Raspberry Pi, or once you have logged into your Raspberry Pi. So right now it's asking me for my password. So I'm gonna put in the password which I imputed when I was doing my setup on my Raspberry Pi imager. All right. I hope I didn't forget it. I can't forget it. I'm just joking. Oops, password doesn't match. Wow. And I said it. All right, my password matches. Yay! I was scared all of a sudden. So, so right now we can now browse, we can now do everything. Let's go to Google. We can check we can go to the terminal. See, it's showing Genesis Hub right here. We can go where else? We can go to, we can check anything we want to check right here. It's showing us here Raspberry Pi. It says browse our products, so you can buy more accessories if you want. But so basically, this is a rundown on how to remotely access your Raspberry Pi without a mouse, a monitor, or a keyboard connected to it. All right. I hope this is insightful or very useful to you. Um, like, subscribe, and share to more people to learn how to um, make good use of various IT and tech tools. Thank you. Bye.